We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. This podcast is airing on November 5th, 2024. Of course, this is election day. We're recording this later in the evening on the 4th. And we have a guest today, a guest we've had in here before, but it's been a while. So he's back. His name is Howard, and he's from Western Minnesota. So we're from the same state. And Howard has an interesting perspective. And like me, he's an older guy, and like me, he's kind of a salty guy. So this show is going to get pretty fucking old and salty pretty quick, right, Howard?
Yep, yep. Um, Thanks for having me back on here. I appreciate it. I listen every morning.
Appreciate
Um,
that.
I was just saying I feel good about the election. I just don't feel good about all these
Stupid fucking
supporters,
people.
yeah, and they're putting they're putting their religious beliefs before their country. They're just I don't know. I don't know what they're thinking.
Let me ask you this, Howard. Have you always felt pretty strongly that Donald Trump was going to get beat here on November 5th? Let's go back to when Joe Biden was running. How did you feel about it then? I think you thought Biden would win.
I felt Biden would win, but I thought it'd be a lot closer. I actually think this one's going to be a landslide.
I
Um,
think
I
it could
seen
be.
some, I seen something on TikTok the other day, Mike. It's not going to be a blue wave. It's going to be a pink wave. The women are going to really make the landslide happen.
I tend to agree with you because, as I've said before, this Republican Party and the and Trump himself, this has really been a war against women. I mean, women are suffering mightily. They've had constitutional rights taken away from them. They are getting sick when they're pregnant and something goes wrong and they can't get the help because the doctors are afraid to be charged with something. This is truly an attack on women. And you've been married for a while, and I've been married for a long while. And I think we both know you don't want to fucking do that because it will come back on you probably 10 times worse than you could ever imagine. And they don't, I think a lot of people think, well, that abortion thing, they'll just forget about it. You haven't ever dated a woman or been married to a woman if you think they're going to forget about that. They're not going to forget about it. They shouldn't forget about it. The people who love them don't forget about it. That's going to be the issue that tears them down, but they got so many other things. It's going to be fun to watch them get destroyed.
Oh, there's just so many things. And look at all the minorities that he's went after. And then how about that thing where was it out in New York, the comedian that, oh, I didn't know nothing about that. But all that's got to be vetted.
Yeah.
How how can you attack all them the Haitians? Wasn't that Ohio? It's just the Mexicans, and I'll go there again too. The Mexicans are our best neighbors we have,
Absolutely. Well,
and
the Canadians are pretty good too. We don't want I got a lot of Canadians listening. We don't want to piss off the Canadians. Canadians and the
no,
Mexican
no,
folks, they're all great people. Uh, but
no.
but you mentioned something. Donald Trump was cultivating the Latino population, and then he and his campaign go off half cocked about Puerto Ricans. I mean, it's like he's trying to lose, and I don't think that's really what it is. I think he's just flailing. He's desperate, so he's saying anything and he's doing anything, and it's just not working for him. He alienated the Haitians, of course, women, people of color, LGBTQ. Other than old white men like you and me, he's alienated virtually everybody. And you and I don't even like the motherfucker. This is why I don't think he has much of a chance to show up. Um, what have you been feeling about how the media has been telling us? Oh, it's a toss up. The polls this, the polls that. How are you feeling about that? Does that make you nervous at all?
No, not at all, because I feel the only, how can I put this one? The only people that lie more than Donald Trump is the media,
Yeah,
and that
good
goes
point.
back to Reagan took off that regulation.
Yeah, the fairness
And then what,
doctrine.
yeah. And the other thing that I don't understand, you watch some of these political ads and they outright lie about the facts. That's got to be okay, how can you put that on public air and then have it so untrue?
Well, people need to start suing the media for running these things. They'll try to blame it on the party, but you were in charge of running it. Just like this comedian saying the things about Puerto Ricans and then Donald Trump saying, I don't know them. Well, you hired him and you vetted his copy and you let him say it. So you are culpable for giving this person a platform to say these lies and abhorrent things. Um, a lot of people will say to me, well, it's going to be close because look at 2020. He had 74 million votes. Joe Biden had 81 million votes, and it was close. I personally think there's a huge difference between 2020 and 2024. In 2020, you had the people that were Donald Trump's core base, right? They're going to vote for him no matter
Yes.
what. And then you had a bunch of other people that were Republicans that weren't appalled enough by Donald Trump and just refused to vote for anybody unless they had an R next to their name. Dad voted Republican, granddad voted Republican, great granddad voted Republican. I'm a Republican. I'm not voting Democrat. I'm just voting Republican. They held their nose and they did that. But we know that's not happening in 2024 because so many Republicans are saying, a fuck enough. I'm not even going to vote for Donald Trump anymore. So to compare 2020 to 2024, I think is a mistake. We're talking about two different worlds, two different situations.
Well, and then I go back to what you always put out too. You know, Joe Biden won by how many votes, and
7
Donald
million.
Trump
Yeah,
hasn't done any to gain on that. Now, I didn't like the way they put Biden out because I thought he was a hell of a good president.
I agree.
But I do like the outcome. That outcome, I would have never seen that outcome. I
No,
think it's going to be so much more decisive with Kamala Harris. You know, Kamala Harris, Donald Trump, one's got a smile and one's always got a frown. And I think, you know, make America great again. I never knew America was that bad, you know.
well, the thing about it is I talked to Arlene Unfiltered yesterday, and she's all about data and numbers, and she knows her shit.
Yeah.
Love hearing from her, make people feel better. And I deal with the numbers that I get in the news reports I get. Um, but one of the things that tell me Kamala's going to win big, and this is kind of esoteric, but notice the vibe of the country. Everybody seems to, I mean, we've been in 9 years of fucking darkness and despair and trials and tribulations, but now everybody seems freer, happier. And that to me says we're kind of changing the paradigm a little bit and we're going another direction. And that always happens. You have bad times and you have good times, and there's the transition. And I think we've gone through enough of the bad times, and this country is ready to make a switch. And you really kind of feel it when you're out and about or when you're watching television and such. There's an entirely different vibe here than there was in 2020.
Oh, exactly. You know, and how she's Kamala such more of a upbeated person, and she's so much more better qualified. You know, she don't have seven bankruptcies. She don't have 34 felonies. That's another screwed up thing. You know, legally I couldn't even vote, but I could have ran for president. Now that don't make no damn sense. And
Now,
I just let you know I got less felonies than Donald Trump too. But you know, how can we even have that happening in our country? Anybody that would vote for Donald Trump cannot tell me they have any respect whatsoever for the law.
no, I mean, Donald Trump is a problem. There's no question about it. But Donald Trump could never do what Donald Trump did without the media, without the Republican Party, and without the followers being complicit. They're the ones that gave him the power to do these things and urged him on to do more. And that's why it's not just Donald Trump who's guilty here. The media is certainly guilty. The Republican Party is going to end up burnt to the ground when this is all said and done, and they deserve it. And MAGA is going to be embarrassed and angry and mad, and they're going to be forced to slither back under their fucking rocks from whence they came.
We always talk about these further indictments. I think that's one chance we have with Kamala Harris. You know, when she wins president, being president, maybe they'll go after like some of them people like Margie Taylor Greene and some of them other ones. I don't know if you read that
Yeah.
165-page drop here. What was that? 2 months ago?
Well,
But that was actually, go ahead.
no, I just think, I think it's been kind of a foregone conclusion that after this election and after we get out of this election campaign bullshit, I think we are going to see superseding indictments of sitting members of Congress like Marjorie Taylor Greene, like Paul Gosar, maybe Ginny Thomas, maybe Roger Stone, probably Roger Stone, because they were all involved in the insurrection to one point or another. They've only indicted
Yeah,
Donald Trump, and
yeah.
they've got a lot of um, unindicted co-conspirators. Well, you can't prosecute one guy in a conspiracy. It's just not possible. So there's going to be
No,
some more
it wouldn't
coming.
be a conspiracy then. Yeah.
Right. Right. So there's going to be more indictments coming after this. Uh, One guy I was just watching Rachel Maddow, and she kind of pisses me off because she's gone a different way than she used to. She's not telling the news. She's telling the stories and she's hyping people up and scaring people. And this is one of the things that bother me about the media. But there's one guy that needs to seriously be looked at quickly as soon as Kamala Harris becomes president or before Biden leaves is Elon Musk. Elon Musk is a huge problem for this country, not just because he supports Donald Trump, but there was a report recently that um, apparently he's talking to Vladimir Putin on a regular basis, which is against the law. That's the Logan Act, much like Donald Trump talking to Vladimir Putin. Now, nothing's going to happen till after the election because they don't want to appear political, which is bullshit. But after the election, these people don't have that kind of protection. But the interesting thing is Vladimir Putin, it's being reported, asked um, Elon Musk as a favor. Vladimir Putin was asking for President Xi in China. And Putin asked Elon Musk, that Starlinked internet, that satellite internet stuff, could you turn it off over Taiwan? And Elon Musk said he would. It's fucking that's to me that's almost treasonous, not quite officially treasonous, but certainly working against this country. This guy is an immigrant himself, naturalized citizen,
Yeah.
but he's got that, and he's got any number of billion-dollar contracts with our U.S. government defense system. This fucker needs to be dealt with quickly after Kamala gets in or before Joe gets out. Long as it's after the election, we need to take this fucker down and kick his ass out because he is a problem for this country.
Oh, I agree with that. I didn't realize he was a naturalized citizen, but I think that needs to be looked at too because they keep talking about he come over on a student visa
Right.
and he was
He
working,
lied.
you know, and what I don't get is why is he on that stage? He is a businessman, not a politician. You know, and he's he he's still first generation. He does not have a right, as far as I'm concerned, to be up on that stage. Yeah, he does need to be looked up at every way that he can be and
The only,
prosecuted. And
the only reason he has power is because he's a billionaire, maybe the richest man in the world.
he's got money.
And he
Yeah.
thinks if he's got money, he can demand anything from anybody and he's going to get special attention. But this guy is a fucking weirdo. There's something weird about him, dancing on the stage, saying and doing stupid things. He goes on Joe Rogan, and he smoked pot on the show. They're just a couple of dipshit bros that are just fucking goofballs. I will tell you this too. This came out just before we were coming on. Joe Rogan came out the day before the election and he endorses Donald Trump, even though he said he wasn't going to endorse Donald Trump. This gutless piece of shit. I don't care how many listeners he has on his podcast. Joe Rogan once described himself as a dumbass, And I agree with him on that. Joe Rogan is a dumbass. He doesn't know enough to speak intelligently about politics, yet he still tries. He makes Elon Musk a buddy. He makes Donald Trump a buddy. So he's on board with all that shit. Well, if you're on board with Donald Trump after November 5th, you're in for a fucking embarrassment because Donald Trump is going to be flayed and burned down when he has no protection.
I hope so, and I hope that happens quickly too. Now everybody talks about Joe Rogan. I never listened to him, so this is one guy you'd never read. But the other one that, and I hear you say this all the time, Jenny Thomas.
Who?
And Jenny Thomas said
Oh, Jenny Thomas. Yeah.
if old man Thomas would retire, they let her off or whatever, kind of like, you know what, they're two different people. They need to be prosecuted separately, and both of them need to be prosecuted to the fullest extent, especially Thomas, because he's a Supreme Court judge. He's supposed to be the exemplar of the law.
Yeah, he's supposed to be
I
above
wouldn't let
reproach.
him retire into obscurity at all. I'd put both of them in prison.
Well, yeah, no, I know what you mean. You want to see him punished, but we do have to get that Supreme Court situation straightened out as quickly as possible because it's one leg of a three-legged chair. You've got the executive, the legislative, and the judicial branch. And if one of those legs isn't working properly, it's hard to maintain democracy. So we got to do whatever's the most expeditious. I don't know what's legal. Got to get him out of there, got to get Alito out of there. And we need to do a full investigation on Kavanaugh that was supposed to have been done in the first place and wasn't. Because if he's a sexual offender, no way this fucker should be in the Supreme Court.
Yeah, on him, weren't they going to vet him, and then Donald Trump told the FBI
Right.
to back off or something? Yeah. Now, all them rules need to be changed. And as far as what the law is, the law can be changed, especially, if it's what we have for a Supreme Court is not a Supreme Court. It's a
No. Well,
well,
we've talked in the past. We won't go into it again, but you're a guy that's had some experience with the judicial system now and again, right?
yes, it's
Okay.
been a long time, but it has
It's
been pretty frequent for a
pretty,
while.
yeah. My point is since Donald Trump has come in and we've watched all the things that happen as a complete neophyte, somebody who doesn't know anything about judicial systems, it seems to me that the judicial system, at least for those people of privilege, is a lot weaker than we thought it was. That our judicial system is essentially toothless for anybody who's got fame, position, or money. Does that make sense to you? I mean, when you were in the judicial system, as it were, did you see people getting treated differently because they might be in a better situation than you were?
Oh yeah, and then I've never seen anybody treated like Donald Trump is treated. He's got 34 felony convictions, and he's still walking around. He's not even be sentenced yet. He's supposed to be running for president. That's the biggest. That's I. I think about that. What do other countries think about that?
Well,
What
they got to
a
be laughing.
joke that is. Yeah,
They got to be laughing. Let me ask you
we're
this.
looking like dumbasses over
You
here.
you've gone through a sentencing experience before, right?
Yes.
Okay, and we know he has the 34 felony charges, and they decided to delay the sentencing till after the election. So in about 3 weeks, he'll be sentenced to whatever he's going to be sentenced by. Now, it pisses us off that he delayed something yet again. But the upside to it is now he's got no protection after this election. He's completely bare to the bone, and he's going to be an average citizen, and they're going to do what they're going to do. Based on what you know about sentencing, do you think there was a strategy by the judge waiting till after the election, well after the election? It's funny that he did it 3 weeks after the election, presuming there might be some delays before they get the final tally. So now 3 weeks after, they're going to sentence him Do you think he did that on purpose? Some people think it's because, well, he wants to sentence him to jail, not only for the crimes, but his behavior after he was convicted. Do you think that he might have waited to do that so he wouldn't run into the red tape about charging or sending this guy to jail?
I don't know because that happened so far. Back when he delayed the sentence, according to everybody else, it was still pretty close then. So I think when they delayed the sentence, they actually gave Donald what if he would have won and got in office? We're acting like he's already lost, which I truly believe he has because all the
Yeah.
stupidity that he's done. But what if he would have pulled off done it? Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. The premise
I
is he
think
gets into
he
office.
should be. Yeah, I think Alito should be. He should be. I think that or that judge in New York should be looked at too because he gave him an opportunity by
Right.
not being sentenced. If he would have been locked up like any other 34 convicted felony criminal, he could have been running for office.
Well, let me ask you this as somebody who's experienced with this. Maybe you don't know about this. People always said the crime that he committed doesn't usually call for jail time. But the fact that he did it 34 times tells me it's not a first offense. It's a 34 time offense, in spite of the fact they all come at once. When somebody's being sentenced, if the level of the crime isn't generally calling for jail time, if this person has done it multiple times, does that change the opportunity for putting
Yes,
somebody in jail?
yes, yeah, yeah, multiple times. But now the first time, that's a weird deal too because I had different types of convictions, but I had two first time convictions. That's a long story, but anyway,
But
it actually was very beneficial for me being on the sentencing end that I got two first time convictions and not a first time and a second time.
well, let me ask you this, just hypothetically. If you're a car thief, okay, and you steal a car and you go to a trial and you're convicted, maybe not, you aren't put in jail. Maybe they don't look at that as a serious crime compared to some other things. But if you go into that trial after stealing 20 cars, they got to look at differently how they're going to sentence you and what you they can't consider you as a 20 car thief the same as somebody who's stolen one. Am I right about that, or is that not how the judicial
Yeah,
system
but then
works?
it goes on to value too.
Okay.
You know what because the 20 car value is a lot more than one car
Well, if I ever get the FBI coming to my house trying to take me off to jail, I'll just remind them that I'm running for president on whenever the fucking next presidential election is, and hopefully I'll be free forever. Thankfully, I'm too old to get in any trouble now, so that probably
value.
is not going to happen. I'm curious, as somebody who's a similar age to me, people are talking about Kamala winning. I'm convinced, I'm confident Kamala's going to win. And as people are listening to this after the polls close, we'll get a sense of how things are going. We maybe don't have the answer tonight, but I think we might have a feeling how it's going after tonight because the eastern states like Florida and Pennsylvania will get a good idea what's going on there. What are your thoughts about the thing that people are most worried about, the possibility of violence after Donald Trump loses? How do you feel about that? Do you think that's going to happen, or you're not confident that it is?
I really don't think there's going to be any mass violence that like there was on January 6th. I I think they're going to be scared, but I'm not going to. That I people like Donald Trump and people that follow him, it's like what behind the back violence. You know what I'm saying there?
Yeah.
I don't think they have enough guts to do it straight out forward, like.
Well, I've said all along that, it was easier for them to do it on January 6, 2021, because Donald Trump was the president. He held back the National Guard. I just heard um, that most of the states around the country are going to activate their National Guard for the week of the election. So it's going to be much harder for these people to do anything. And my sense about these people, the Trump-a-fucks, the Gravy Seals or the Meal Team Six, um, they are cowards at heart. And it was easy for them to go to the Capitol because they knew that Donald Trump would protect them. But Donald Trump's not president anymore. Joe Biden is. And he's not going to fuck around and allow something like January 6th to happen again. So he's going to be on top of it. As I said, the states are going to be activating the National Guard. And I wouldn't be surprised if Biden and the Pentagon have activated the National Guard in D.C. as well, just to make sure they stop this stuff. And when these cowards go up and they see these troops or these National Guard people, they aren't going to do shit. They don't have the courage to do it. They're afraid to either be put in jail or put down, because that's what's going to happen if they try some shit like that again.
Oh yeah, and that's the way I look at it too. The Democrats are in charge. It we are so lucky that Trump didn't pull it off when he was in charge. But it goes back to it's going to be so decisive, and if he couldn't do it when he's in charge, there's no way he can do it when he's not in charge.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
like you said, it's going to get squashed.
We were very fortunate that Donald Trump is a dumb fuck, and everybody around him was afraid to do anything but what Donald Trump told them to do. Had that been a formidable man or woman doing this, we could have a different story today. We might not even be having an election today if not for the ignorance and ineptitude of Donald Trump.
Exactly. If there would have been a better organizer and a better planner, because from what I read, when I read that whole 165-page draft, it was there's no question there can be if anybody would take the time to read that fully, there could be no question in their mind that they did not they did they tried so they that was planned out. They did everything within their power to turn that election over. It just didn't go quite as planned.
Some people are suggesting that as early as 10 o'clock or maybe 2 in the morning, regardless of how this is going during the closing of the polls and the numbers coming in, Donald Trump is going to claim a win. And they know this because he did it before. Are you worried about uh, some of the actions he might take after and trying to flip the election? I'm not particularly, but I'm curious as to how you see it. All the things he's going to do, it was a hoax, it was rigged, go to court over this, go to court over that. Are you concerned about that at all?
No, not at all. And anybody to sit and think that he's not going to do that has got their head up their
Yeah,
ass too.
I agree.
I think what they need to do there is when they air that on TV, now Trump whining about the rigged election. I think on a split screen, they need to air every time that he's whined about how about the Academy Awards when he didn't get an Academy Award? How about the 2020 election and everything that he's ever come close to losing has been rigged
Yeah.
or lost? It's because it's been rigged.
Yeah, I agree. I honestly, what I think the media should do, and it's about time after all this time, if he loses this election as handily as I think he will, the media should just turn off the cameras. Don't give him a platform. Don't give him the exposure. That's what he thrives on, attention. That's kind of why I do what I do on TikTok. I block all the Trumplafucks. They want attention. They can't build a flat platform of their own, so they come on mine or other people's and try to spew their bullshit. Instead of arguing with him, and you can't, just shut them out, shut them off, quiet them.
that's a good thought, but now you're putting that back into the media's hands. And do you think the media is going to go from doing the wrong thing for the last 8 years to doing the right thing overnight? I don't think, I think media is another thing that has to get taken to court because of all the false bullshit that they allow to be out there. You know, that's part of what Trump's following is the misinformation. You
Right.
know, we can't allow that to happen. We cannot allow that to happen. You know, they say we got to have free news, but we got to have some type of regulation that is actually factual news.
Right. Well, we talked about uh, Ronald Reagan and how he got rid of the fairness doctrine, and that made the media kind of like the Wild West. They can do whatever they want to do. So because that was taken away, there's not much the government can do about what they broadcast. The only potential thing that can happen is individuals or companies suing them for defamation, much like Dominion did with Fox News. They won. Now Smartmatic's going to come through there. They're going to get their ass kicked again, but because the government won't protect us in this situation, it falls back on us. We got to make the noise, we got to demand, we've got to push. So even after Donald Trump loses, we got to be pushing the Democrats and whatever Republicans are left to do the right thing, because they don't do the right thing for us by nature. It's about public opinion and pressure. So even after Donald Trump loses this, we still have to be here to apply the pressure with anybody or on anybody that isn't doing what they're supposed to do. And I mean Democrat or Republican.
Yeah, and that's the way it needs to be. Always needed to be. But I'm just saying you have a pretty high expectations. That you know, the other thing
Yeah, I
about
don't expect
media
them to
is
do that.
they're big business, they're corporations. You know, those are the people that we need to fight against. The corporations. That's another rule that needs to get changed. And I don't know who made that rule. Like corporations are represented as people. You know, that's another thing we got wrong in this country. Our money, big money runs this country.
Absolutely. And that's something we have to change, at least with that big money in government. And you're right. When I said the media needs to just shut them out and shut them off, uh, that's just hope and dreams for me. I understand when Donald Trump is wetting his pants, shitting his pants, and screaming at the top of the lungs, um, the media is going to go, "Oh, that's good TV. We can't leave that money on the table." Of course, they're going to put him on there. And that's a sad thing where they choose money over country, but that's exactly what the media does each and every time, and that's both left side and right side. They always go for the money, that the people in the country be damned.
That's what wealth does.
Yeah,
Or, you know, more wealth than I'll ever know. But it's like they hit a certain point, and enough is never enough, and you do what you need to do to get that more. You know.
right. Well, how do you feel about? I mean, almost anybody that would run against Donald Trump would look good, right? How do you feel specifically about Kamala Harris as her being the president? Obviously, she's got a lot of enthusiasm behind her, but you personally, how do you see her, or how do you feel about her becoming president of the United States?
Um, I I didn't know what to think at first, and I thought it was a
Can I can I
bad.
can I just say something first?
Yes,
People are going to say the same thing they think about me when they see me the first time. Oh, that old racist fuck. You got to remember, Howard's married to a beautiful black woman, so don't don't think you know what
I,
he's going to say.
I, well, I was going to bring that in to that, but anyway, after that, Joe Biden got pushed aside. I think she was the perfect one to come in because she's got the enthusiasm. She's a very smart woman. You know, by being a black woman, she did not get to where she got to be without a lot of hard work and a lot of
Absolutely,
intelligence.
absolutely.
And yeah, but you can have all that and you can still be a dud. But I love the intelligence and that, but she's contagious. Yeah, is that a good way to describe her?
Yeah,
Is
I think
contagious?
that's a good way to play. I mean, she encompasses both sides that we need. We need somebody who's articulate and strong and tough. She is unquestionably that. But if you see her with the people, fucking people love her, and she's hugging people and
Yeah,
she's talking to people. She's got both traits that are absolutely important in being a successful politician, and you just don't see that anymore. Not even
she
Joe
seems.
Biden could pull off what she's pulling off.
Yeah, and seems so well planted, and she seems. And when you do see her around people, she seems so down to earth, like she's one of us,
Right, right.
and you, you know, and then when it comes in this house, if there's a black woman running for any office, you vote for the black woman
Well,
in this
absolutely,
house.
absolutely. And frankly, in my house too, I'm married to a white woman, and it isn't even about black and white. It's about being a woman.
Women,
And I said that about Kamala Harris too. People will always say, and I hate this, I tell people this is racist when you say this, and they deny it. But, when Kamala was going to be a possible candidate and we didn't know what was going to happen with the enthusiasm, people would say, I don't know if this country's ready for a black woman as president. Fuck you. Why not? I mean, because she's black. I mean, black is an aesthetic. It doesn't identify the heart, the soul, and the mind of any more than my pasty white face does. It has nothing to do with it. But this is my contention. Because of Donald Trump and all the strife and all the trials and tribulations, we needed a champion that could fight back. She is that champion that could fight back. And when we found the champion that could tear Donald Trump down, the fact that she's black, South Asian, or a woman, doesn't really make that much difference anymore. People aren't worried about that. It's not a matter of if it's time or we're ready for it. We need her because of who she is. Has nothing to do with her being black or South Asian or a woman. Do you
well,
get that
and she's
sense?
yeah, it makes 100% sense, and she's so intelligent, and so articulate. When she attacks Donald Trump, she attacks him on the facts.
Right.
It's not a personal fact, attack. I've never seen Donald Trump attack anybody except for personally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think people are getting tired of that too. And people might still think, are we ready for a woman president? I didn't know for sure about that either, but I'm definitely ready for a woman president over 34 time convicted felon.
And when you say, are we ready for it? What you're really saying is this country still too racist and too sexist to vote a black woman in?
Texas.
It's not a matter of whether that woman can handle the job. There's no question about that. She's better experienced than
Better,
Donald Trump
better.
by a ton. She's better experienced than Obama was when he came in. She has more
Yeah.
experience. And so it's a matter of what's this country think. And I think we might be at that turning point now because we're going to have a black South Asian woman be our champion and pull us out of the depths of this bullshit we've been dealing with MAGA. And I'm excited about it. First of all, as far as a presidential candidate, she's the one candidate that I've been most excited about. I'm excited seeing her as president because I think she's going to do an amazing job. But as far as this, we're being ready for it. I think it's being foisted on us because we're in desperation straits and we need somebody to kick some ass. And right now, she's that one person that can kick some ass and has been doing it for the last, what, 4 or 5 months.
And and sometimes that's how change takes place is when we're pushed into it.
Yeah.
And like you say, we might have got pushed into Kamala Harris, but she's the best thing that's happened to this presidential race since it started, and when Trump is lost and he's not a contender anymore. I'd say the day that he loses, well, of course, he's gonna contest it. And the day his contesting is done, he's gonna enter the race for the next time around.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know
Um,
what I mean? He's
yeah.
just,
I'm curious,
we got to get rid of him. We just got to get rid of him.
yeah, we've got to put him down for good, like a sick dog. Um, I wanted to ask you too, because you and I have this in common. Tim Walz is the vice presidential candidate. He is the governor of our state, my state, your state, state of Minnesota. And there are a lot of people, Republicans in this state, that hate Tim Walz. And for the life of me, I can't understand it because he's similar to Joe Biden in Minnesota in that he's got a lot done without a lot of help in the legislature. How did you feel when she picked Tim Walz, and how do you feel now that he's been there for a while?
Um, I loved it when she picked Tim Walz, and the longer now it's been what he made a TikTok today or something. It's been 87 days. The more I get to know about that man, the more I like him. He's got a big heart, just like she does. And who else could you find that can keep up with that enthusiasm like he has? I
Oh
mean,
yeah,
I think as far as them two being a good fit, I think they're great. I think they're a great fit. And I hope because they are such a good fit that you see, I think our vice president does not have enough of a role in politics because if something does happen to the president, nobody really knows who they are.
right.
I think we need to know the vice president just as well as the president.
I think when Tim Walz first came
And
in,
maybe with this pair, we will.
yeah, well, I think when Tim Walz came in,
Go ahead.
he was just such a rocket going off. People loved him immediately, and he was talking and being funny and all that stuff. And at that point, I said, we love this guy, but ultimately he's going to have to pull back a little bit because Kamala's got to be the star if we expect her to win the presidency. And they did that. But you can see the fire in Tim Walz. He'll say something every
Yeah.
so often, and the campaign will go, "Now, Tim, back off a little bit." Like he said, "I don't like the Electoral College. We got to get rid of it." And the campaign said, "We don't necessarily disagree with you, but not before the fucking election." Tim's got a lot of fire in him. And if he's given
Yeah.
the sway to do it, he could be a very powerful foe too.
Well, and then he's got them saying the dancing dipshit, and then he's good. Both of them together are like so down to earth. And we haven't had that in a politician in a long time since Jimmy Carter, probably. So,
I feel like Tim and I, because he's from Minnesota, Nebraska originally, but because he's the Minnesota governor, um, I feel like Tim and I are perpetuating a stereotype because prior to Tim Walz saying uh, Elon Musk was a dipshit, that's one of my favorite words. I say dipshit all the time. You don't hear anybody in other parts of the country say that. So apparently Tim and I are standard old men from Minnesota because we use the term dipshit a lot.
yeah, I've used that term too. I didn't know that was a Minnesota term, but
I didn't
I'm
either
proud
until,
of it after he,
oh, hell yeah.
yeah,
I mean, I didn't make the word up. I think I probably heard it from my grandfather, is what I probably heard it from.
yeah,
But
exactly.
all right,
So,
we're gonna take a quick break and then we'll come back and we'll do another bit about this. We got plenty to talk about, so stick with us here on the Rational Boomer podcast. We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. We have Howard from Western Minnesota, rural Minnesota. And I wanted to talk to you about that. As we watch this election, there are a lot of people who are concerned. It's maybe because of the media, but I think there's a lot of people who live in rural parts of the country and all they see is Trump signs and all the people around them are talking about Trump. So they presume that that's how the country is. And frankly, it's much different in rural communities than it is in urban communities. You live in the hinterlands of Minnesota, so to speak, Western Minnesota. What's the climate out there? I mean, I'm hearing some people saying that even in those red areas, people are starting to kind of shift to. What are you seeing in rural Minnesota?
Well, what I noticed out here, yeah, there's a lot of Trump signs, but there's a lot of Harris signs too. But I noticed the other day I went to Fargo. It seems like the further north I went, the more red it got. At
Really?
least there were a lot more Republican signs than Democrat signs, you know. And the other thing is what I don't get is, you know, Republican is supposed to be red and Democrats are supposed to be blue, but you know, I've seen most of the signs are blue right across the board. Is that a ploy too? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that could be. Well, let me ask you this: as a out of the closet flaming libtard in a rural community, do you run into trouble with that sort of thing? Because I got to think if somebody walks up and says Trump 2024, you're not just going to smile at them and walk away. You're going to probably have something to say.
Oh, I just call them stupid, but they kind of leave me alone around here. You know, I've been in trouble before, and people, I don't know. And then, of course, I got a black wife, and I, I, I don't think they want to test the waters, if that's a good way to put it.
You're probably right. This guy's been in prison before. You better watch out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, that's interesting. Have you know anybody that was rabid red that has changed their color, so to speak? Have you talked to anybody that's maybe changed their mind based on the shit they've seen?
No, no, no. It, and that's what amazes me. How can all this shit go on and still want to vote Republican? Because here's something that we've never even touched on tonight. You know, how about all the Republicans that are endorsing Kamala Harris?
Yeah.
And then not only the Republicans that are endorsing her, but how about all these ex-Trump staff people? They're Republicans too,
Right.
but that actually worked for Donald Trump the first term. That says we shouldn't let him back in the office for a second term. Are all them people wrong?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, to the Trump-fucks out there that still support Donald Trump, what you just described, is that not a red flag? Does not that just tells you the kind of people we're dealing with? You know, people would throw around the idea that these people are in a cult, and it was kind of a diss to these people. But in realistic terms, they're behaving as like they're in a cult. You know, you can walk up to them and say, "Your guy was found guilty of sexual assault. You okay with that?" "Oh, I don't believe it happened," or "the judge was corrupt." That's what a cult member would say. Their leader is infallible and they will believe nothing that goes against them. That's the troubling part, is that when this election is over, we've got to deal with a lot of people that probably should be deprogrammed, but you're not going to be able to do that.
No, and I'm only 61. I'm by far not the oldest guy in the room, but I have never can remember a presidential election in my life where so many people from the opposite party has endorsed somebody from the other party. I don't ever remember that happening. Do
No,
you ever remember that happening?
no, it's never happened. And the thing about it is I've always said, you're worried about Donald Trump winning. No Republican candidate can win the presidency unless he has a united Republican Party. And we know for a fact that a lot of them have peeled off and said, we can't stomach this. So if he can't gain the support of his entire party, how are we to believe he's going to have a chance winning the presidential election? That would mean he'd have to get Democrats crossing over. That's not happening. Or independents helping him out. But we know independents have pulled away from him too. This is why when they say, oh, it's a toss up, how can it be? She's out fundraised him by 3 times. She's got an impressive, if not the best ground game in history. He's got zero ground game. He doesn't have a unified party. Kamala Harris does. how does any of that translate into a fucking toss up? It doesn't.
Well, and that's another reason we have to go after the media and straighten the media out too, because that's all false information. I believe this will be the biggest difference that we'll ever see in our lifetime. I predict a landslide slide, but even if you don't consider the landslide, I think Kamala Harris will win by more votes than we've seen in our lifetime and that we will see in our lifetime.
Part of me says that's true. I mean, I'm a cautiously optimistic. I don't trust the electric totally, but everything in terms of the facts would suggest that. I mean, in any normal circumstance, it would be an absolute landslide because Donald Trump has no business being a candidate for any major party. In normal situations, he would not be because he's probably the worst presidential candidate we've ever seen in history. He's even worse now than he was in 2016 or 2020. So, and you mentioned about the media, and I've said this too a couple of times. The question I will have if Kamala wins in a landslide or even a decisive win, the question I'm going to have to the media is you spent 2 years telling us it's going to be a toss off, too close to tell, and then it ends up being a landslide. How is it possible that two big dumb white fucks in Minnesota knew and MSNBC or Fox News didn't? I can only tell you a couple things. First of all, they'll say, well, we checked the polls. Well, the polls are wrong. If you've got somebody who's notoriously wrong, maybe they shouldn't be your source. If that's all you got, you got all the money in the world, you've got the platform, you got to do better than that. But I don't think it's that they were being stupid. I think it was a manipulation, as we talked about. I think it was to get people worked up so they improve their viewership. And it was about money all along. And that has to be addressed because people go to them trusting them for information. And when it's all said and done, they were fucking lied to.
Well, and it comes back to the money to the point where that's why they want a Republican in office because Republicans take care of big money. They don't care what name is behind that Republican. They just want a Republican in office because and then they have all this working for them, and Republicans are for big money, and your media is big money. So,
As somebody who's confident like I am about how this is going to turn out, I mean, every day I get people coming to my DMs, my emails, to my comments, and they are literally terrified at the prospect. Every day they'll say, "What about this? Is this going to get Trump to win?" I said, "No, my mind hasn't changed. It's not going to happen." And they, okay, I feel better. Where you are doing the things you do you run into those people? Given that you're confident about what's happening, like I am, do you get people coming to you going, "Oh fuck, I'm terrified," and then you have to talk them off the ledge?
oh yeah, um, just this lady the other day, and she's a big deal in our county. But I think it goes back to the way we're programmed, and it goes back to how can we even have a man running like this? And if we can have a man running like this, anything can happen.
Yeah. Well,
That's the way they're looking at it. And if you look, it kind of makes sense because just having him run, it shouldn't even be, you know.
no,
So if he can even be running, who's to say he couldn't end up in office somehow? Well, I don't think it happen, but it ain't going to be by getting voted in, that's for sure. Now,
no.
if big money can put him in, I don't know how do you fight it.
I don't think that's even possible. I think people wake up every morning. They're used to having the rug pulled out from under them. I think they get up in the morning sometimes and they go looking for things to worry about because they're expecting the other shoe to drop. Um, and they listen to the media, and the media tells them whatever they tell them, and that just makes them more frightened, which is what the media is trying to do. I wonder though. I was telling somebody now, say Kamala wins and she wins big. People will say, "Oh, everybody will breathe a sigh of relief, and then they won't be worried anymore." And you know what? That's not true. People will be relieved for a second because she won, and then they'll be clutching their pearls, going, "How is Donald Trump going to steal this? How is he going to do that?" When we know he can't really get away with it, he didn't get away with it when he had the power in 2020. We know what's coming, it's being protected, but people will always just waiting for something bad to happen. And we got to get people out of that mindset. We got to give them some reason to think positively going forward.
And you know what? Between her and Tim Walz, I think them two can do that
I do
by
too.
going in and running good government.
Yeah.
There is good government out there. We just got to get back to it.
And I don't want to give the impression that I'm suggesting that Joe Biden didn't do a good job with the government. He did one of the best jobs of president we've seen in my lifetime, in your lifetime, or maybe ever. But the problem with what was going on with Joe Biden's an older guy. He's old school, so he handles everything, tries to be sophisticated and decent about it. He's really not the kind of guy that's going to wade into a fight. But during the whole time Joe Biden's been president, we've had this dark cloud over us, which is MAGA and Donald Trump. He got all this stuff done at heavy odds in Congress, but also in the process where Donald Trump is creating this shit show and this abhorrent shit going on. I'm hoping that when Kamala takes over, she's strong enough and MAGA is weak enough that we can finally set that aside and, like you say, get back into a situation where it's a more positive outlook. We might see the sun every so often. And that's going to help us to go forward if we can get some positivity back in this bitch.
Well, and that's another thing. You know, you talk about Joe. I look at Joel kind of like a slow, steady turtle. He went to work every day. He made things happen. He didn't say, "Hey, look at what I did." He put his nose down. He went to the grindstone every day. He chipped away, and people don't realize what he's done in his presidency. But he's like you say, he's one of our most accomplished presidents there are.
Absolutely.
We need to know about them things. The media doesn't cover them. He don't call them in, whatever. But he looks at the presidency being a job, not a fucking circus show. Like, well, Trump's out there performing the circus act. Joe's going to work and getting stuff done. He's done the CHIPS Act, the infrastructure,
Yeah, he's done
what's Trump done?
the COVID relief bill, all that stuff. The thing about it
Yeah,
is Joe's
people
giving,
don't know it.
well, they
A
should
lot of
know it.
people don't. Yeah, they
They
should,
should.
but people don't know it. They don't
Yeah.
know it.
I mean, I've had Trump fucks come up to me and say, Joe Biden's done nothing. Are you fucking high? You don't read, you don't listen. But here's what I will say about Joe. And I've said this before. Joe's been in the Senate for a long time. He was vice president for 8 years. There's probably nobody sharper, more cunning in Washington, D.C. than Joe Biden. They'll sit back and they'll say, oh, poor old Joe's slow, poor old Joe's sleepy. But the position we are currently in with Kamala Harris and the seriously strong position she's in, that was all and completely orchestrated by Joe Biden. He chose the right moment to step aside. He knew they would try to look past Kamala Harris because we all weren't sure if she'd get any attention. He waited an hour, then he came back and he said, by the way, I'm endorsing her and putting my support around her. And then it exploded. None of that would have happened. We still might be dicking around with somebody we're not sure about if not for Joe Biden orchestrating that whole thing. And he deserves a lot of credit for saving this country when Kamala Harris gets elected.
Exactly. There's so much that he does that he's not given credit for. And like I say, I didn't want him pushed aside, but the way, especially the way it happened, but the way he handled it, and
Yeah.
then came back and endorsed her, and he just he like paved the whole way. And yeah, he is. He's good at what he does, and he is out to help America.
Yeah.
It's kind of like when he was running for president, he didn't have nothing to lose,
No.
and he still don't.
Well, that's a good
So
question. He's been made to hold back a little bit because everybody's walking on tiptoes with this election coming up. Now the election happens, Kamala wins. He's definitely got nothing to lose. He can do a lot of shit that won't stain Kamala Harris that will work pretty nicely on his legacy. So does once he has the total freedom, he's a lame duck. He doesn't have to run for anything again. Kamala Harris is taking over on January 20th. Does Joe start getting a little more bucky, like going to Bibi Netanyahu and saying, "All right, stop fucking around, or we're going to do something," without worrying about affecting the election, or going to Donald Trump, or going to Merrick Garland and saying, "Bitch, you're fired because you fucked up." Do you think Joe has it in him to do that, or will he stick to his standard old school politics?
I think he'll stick to his standard old school politics. Um, as far as on the world stage, he has to hand that over. So,
Yeah,
he has to be careful. As far as that prosecutor, whatever his name was, he should have fired him
Merrick
2 years
Garland. Yeah,
ago.
yeah.
Merrick Garland. One thing that I think he should do, and your guest disagreed that he wouldn't do this. I think he needs to pardon his son because they drug his son into the politics when he wasn't even in it.
No, I agree with you. I disagree with Arlene about that too. That Joe would be worried about his legacy, and even if it's his own son, you have to understand how big of a family man Joe is, and
Exactly.
how irritated he is with Merrick Garland for putting his son through that. Because honestly, what what his son went through was egregious from the judicial system. He had a deal cut, and the deal was legitimate for what
Yes.
minor crimes he committed. They should have just let it go, but they didn't because the Republicans pushed the issue. And then Merrick Garland put the special counsel on there. And I'll tell you right now, I've had other people say this too. The fact that Merrick Garland put that special counsel there, who was a rabid Republican, and he did what he did to his son, Joe's pissed. I mean, Joe's not even talking to Nancy Pelosi anymore, a close friend, because of the disrespect she showed when they were asking him to step aside. And that's one of the things about him stepping
Yes.
aside. It's one thing to ask him to step aside, but do it in public. You're disrespecting a president, a successful president, a longtime member of the Senate and vice president, a longtime friend, and because you're getting little butterflies in your stomach, you go to the public and you do that. Joe didn't deserve that kind of disrespect. And Merrick, he didn't deserve the disregard he got from Merrick Garland. I don't think he'll fire him before Kamala gets in
No.
because Kamala will want her own person, but he needs to do something to Merrick Garland because we're in this situation right now where Donald Trump is still bouncing around because of Merrick Garland. If he would have got on his bicycle and went at it at January 21st, 2021, Donald Trump's whole legal shit would be gone and we wouldn't have to be dealing with this shit. This guy needs to fucking go quickly.
And I agree 100%. He needs to go, and he's screwed around too long on even getting down Trump in the spotlight. But one thing that did make that's good is since Donald Trump, it took this long, we got a beatable candidate. There's no way we're going to lose against Donald Trump. If we would have got rid of him 2 years ago, they might have been able to get a viable candidate.
That's true. That's true. They could have got a
You,
viable
you
candidate,
know,
but see that's the ignorance of the Republican Party. The Republican Party should have enough intelligence that on January 20 or January 21st of 2021, they should have said, "Oh, thank God we're done with them. Let them go to Mar-a-Lago and shut the fuck up." But they didn't do that. Kevin McCarthy goes down, embraces him, pulls him back in. How desperate do you have to be as a party if you think you need Donald Trump to be successful after having lost with Donald Trump? pull him back in only to burn down the party you're trying to save. That's fucking crazy.
Yeah, and he's not loyal to a party anyway, because one thing that never gets brought up is he wanted to run as a Democrat. They wouldn't let him, so that's when he became a Republican. He used to give money to the Democrats.
Yeah, he's done something like that before. When he was young, he really wanted to own an NFL team. They said, "Fuck no,
Yeah,
Donnie, you're not coming in here." So they started a new league, the USFL, and I happened to work at a radio station. We did the uh, studio master control for that stuff. And Donald Trump got into the USFL, and he was part and parcel to burning down that whole fucking league. This guy destroys everything he walks into, and had they let him in the NFL, he would have done that to them. And the same with the Republican Party. The thing is, I know there are Republicans out there that knew how bad he was, that knew he was a criminal, that knew he was a, um, a liability for the thing, but they still stand by him. They still stand by him. What do you think is going to happen to these people that have stood by him to the end? When he's done, he's a pariah. He's the butt of the jokes. What are these people that are younger that have a career that they're hoping to have? How do they cleanse themselves of this?
I wish we could take him to court and try
Some of
them
them we
people
can.
as traitors. Now, who's that guy that came out with that book about all this stuff that Donald Trump had done? And
Michael Wolf, I think, Fire and Fury or something.
yeah, yeah, and I'm with what's her name down there in Las Vegas. He needs to be sent to court too, because for him to know all the information that he knew and not say anything about it, he's a detriment to this country too.
I'll have to correct myself. You're not talking about Michael Wolff. You're talking about the guy from Watergate, and he came out with the information. And you're talking about Old Soul
Yeah,
down in Las
yeah,
Vegas, and she was
yes,
angry
yes.
at this author. There's another book that's coming out though too called um, well, there's another author who wrote a book, uh, and he has a podcast, and he came out with some audio tapes again very fortuitously just before he's trying to sell something and just before an election. He's had this for 10 years. But the audio tape is an interview with Jeffrey Epstein. Now, Jeffrey Epstein, Donald Trump said, I don't really know him. He was around. I met him, seemed like a nice guy, but I don't really know him. Jeffrey Epstein on this tape said that was asked, how do you know this about Donald Trump? He said, well, we were close friends for 10 years. So, in spite of the fact that Donald Trump said he didn't know him, Jeffrey Epstein said they were close friends. You have to wonder with the P. Diddy situation and maybe the tie ins to Jeffrey Epstein, does he not get sucked into some of that whole fucking mess over and above the political part of it?
Well, Jeffrey Epstein, I don't believe committed suicide, and I wonder
No,
about Pete Diddy too, if he's going to live to see court.
that's a good question.
If he doesn't live to see court, he dealt with a lot of big people like Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein, yeah, as soon as they put him into custody, I knew he was dead. I'm actually surprised P. Diddy is still alive, but we'll see. We'll see what happens there.
Well, you've been locked down a time or two. So I'm curious when you've got guards and you've got jail cells, how does somebody get killed in prison? I mean, unless they're walking around in general population for whatever reason, for mealtime or whatever. How does that happen? Especially when you've got guards that are specifically supposed to be watching him for a suicide concern. How is there any way that can happen, or is this why you think there's no way he committed suicide?
I just think there's no way he committed suicide. I think he was killed in there, and he made look like a suicide. And I think the people that he would expose could afford to hire anybody to do that, whether that was another inmate or a guard. In Epstein's case, it would have had to been a guard.
Yeah. Well, now, like,
you know.
well, in the case of Jeffrey Epstein and P. Diddy, whether they live or die doesn't really matter because there's supposed to be tons and tons of videotape, and it won't be hard to identify people that are involved. You have to wonder why those videotapes have not been released. I mean, is it somebody with money who's bribing somebody or pressuring somebody to not release these things? I mean, if it were you and me in those videotapes, they would have been out 5 years ago and we would have been taken to task. But if these videotapes truly
Yeah,
exist, what would be the reason for holding them back, especially if the guy's dead now?
the people in power that it would give up. I really think it people with power and money think they have enough wealth to buy to do anything they want, and
And
then
apparently they do.
yeah, they do. And when they and then the other thing that wealth brings is you can close them exposure doors too. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah,
they'll
absolutely.
pay anything not to be exposed. You know, so
You know, I've been trying to tell people how Donald Trump has been successful in delaying criminal trials and sentencing and appeals and that sort of stuff. And I think this ultimately works against him because he's so delusional. He was hoping against hope that he would win the election and he'd be able to shut all this down as if nothing ever happened. I think that would have been hard to do even if he became president. But beyond that, he's not going to win the presidency. Um, I have to wonder, you got the big trials against Donald Trump. If a bunch of shit isn't going to fall down upon him, like the statement he made about Liz Cheney, there's now an investigate about the firing squad and guns in her face. There's now an
mhm.
investigation in Arizona as to whether he broke the law. And there are a lot of other smaller laws that he's broken. Once he's no longer a candidate, once there's no longer an election, an imminent election, does he start getting hit nickel and dime with all these things? Do people just say, fuck it, we're going to pile on and tear this fucker to shreds? I mean, the government's known for doing that. Will they do that to Donald Trump?
Oh, I think so. And it's just like anything else in this animal world of ours. Once it goes down, the vultures set in, and that's
Yeah.
what we're seeing now. That thing with Liz Cheney, I think if that would have taken place 3 months ago, there wouldn't have been a investigation opened up. But they see that he's going to lose, so the vultures are gonna start circling, especially after tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Are you surprised? I mean, we were talking about it earlier with the Puerto Ricans and the Haitians and all the others. Are you surprised how Donald Trump, every time he steps up, he seems to do just the wrong thing to hurt himself? I've often said, just let the fucker talk because he'll destroy himself. He'll do more damage to himself than Kamala Harris could ever do. Um, but are you surprised by how he's behaving now? I'm
No,
assuming you've
no.
dealt with some narcissists in your life.
I think he's getting very desperate at this point, and the desperation is starting to come out. And then, like, his age and it can be, I'm only 61. I get tired at night, but I couldn't imagine campaigning and the schedule that they have to be on. And then he started like really slowing down, and Kamala just went full blast. He had to go back out there. I'm surprised it hasn't killed him.
Well, I am too. You know, initially when all this stuff started coming down, I said, I'm not sure he can survive to be the nominee. And obviously I was wrong there. He's more a cockroach than we know because he apparently can survive anything. And maybe it's due to his delusional mental capacity because a normal man with 34 felony convictions, three other serious trials that would most certainly put him in jail, losing $500 million, all this embarrassing shit coming out. If you're a 35-year-old guy, it would crush you emotionally at the very least, and maybe physically too. It hasn't with him. It's diminished him. Um, but I am very surprised he's still ambulatory. Shitty pants and all, he is still standing, and I'm very, very surprised that he's been able to do that.
but I think he's losing it mentally. You
Yeah,
know, it just he's you know, um, I think they protect him there a lot. You know, even though a lot of stuff gets aired, you know, like when Biden and make a slip, they go after him like for riots. They
right.
haven't done that, Trump, and I think that you know, but it's getting to be more and more and more and more people are seeing that he's out of here. You know, so
So,
next few days the vultures will be circling.
yeah, absolutely. So you think I have to wonder, given all he's gone through, and Kamala did the right thing. She's got a lot of energy, a lot of enthusiasm. She was basically, I mean, Donald Trump would have sat in Mar-a-Lago and just rode the wave if he thought he could do that. But I think Kamala, as well as being an excellent campaigner, I think she thought to herself, I'm going to run this motherfucker into the ground. I'm going to be everywhere. And he's going to feel like he has to do what I'm doing. And he's 78 years old, not the healthiest guy in the world. And I think she's kind of run him ragged. You have to wonder after the election, and he's exhausted every possibility in his hope against hope of winning this election. He won't be successful. Do we see some kind of collapse, whether it be real or fake?
I don't think he'd fake a mental collapse. I think it's already happened.
Yeah.
I think it's just being covered, you know, because he is running for president. They don't have nobody else to put in there in the last day. I think he's had been collapsing for a while. I think it's really going to show, especially if he gets beat in a landslide. That's really when he's going to have his meltdown.
Yeah, because if he gets beaten in a landslide, it's going to hinder every argument he thinks he has. I mean, it's just going to be
Yes.
silly at that point.
And I kind of like what you came out with the other day is, you know, if it was a rigged election, we did a pretty goddamn good job to do it when he was in office.
And we're going to
And
do it
now we're
again.
going to, yeah, you know, so
These tough guys
yeah,
think we're just weaklings as Democrats, and according to them, we fooled you fucking twice. We played you
yeah,
twice. You pussy
yeah,
ass bitches.
I like that.
Yeah, no, I was
So
thinking about that. You know, they always like to talk tough. Um, I would like to think that after the election and he loses substantially, that the Republicans will walk away from him and leave him standing by himself with his dick in his hand. That's what I'd like to believe. But I'll be honest with you, I thought that would be the case in 2021 too. Well, he lost. He lost significantly. You know, he's no good to us anymore because he lost in 2018. He lost in 2020. It's time to let him go, and they didn't. Do you think there's any possibility that people still hold on to this guy after the 2024 election tomorrow or today, and they still have hope for this guy? I can't imagine, but they've done it before.
I don't think the Republican Party on a whole, they're going to let it go. Now, MAGA, that 30% of that 50% or whatever, now it might be a little bit harder to get rid of them, but they're not gonna have their leader no more. That's
Right,
for sure. So I don't know
right.
what does it do when they lose their leader.
So what
Do
do you
they
think?
all move to Mar-a-Lago?
You ain't gonna let those dirt bags into his place, and
No.
and it depends on how soon Letitia James takes her pound of flesh, because she might grab up Mar-a-Lago. He may be living in a fucking refrigerator box on Highway 95.
Yeah. Him and
Um,
Rudy Giuliani, maybe they go to the same Salvation Army.
well, we're at a point now with Rudy Giuliani. He was given 7 days. We're past that now, and theoretically, those two election workers are starting to scoop up his shit. The only thing that he's fighting over is he's got two condos, one in New York and one in Florida. And according to the homestead law, nobody can take away your home,
Yeah.
one
Yeah.
home, one home. So he's trying to debate, well, which home is the one you want to take? Because he's not telling you which his home is. And that won't work. That'll delay it a little bit. But they're going to take his shit. They're not only going to take his one home, but they're going to take anything of value that he has. And he still won't be close to paying off the bill he owes to those two women, $156 million. So anything he makes in the future is probably going to be scooped up as well. The only saving grace that Rudy Giuliani has, he's about 150 and he's in just as bad a shape as Donald Trump. So he may not live very long.
And that's Rudy Giuliani is the spitting image of what Trump is and can do to a person because I remember when Rudy Giuliani was, 9/11, he was America's mayor being
Yeah.
out there in New York. I actually thought he could have become the president after that deal, if he would have had some political ambitions
Heaven forbid.
for himself. But, he went from that to the state that he is in now. It's just like night and day difference. Trump is ruined that man.
Yeah, what is it in somebody who's relatively successful, whether it be Rudy Giuliani or Mike Lindell? They've had their own success in their own right. They could have coasted home and died and left a good legacy. What is it that entices somebody to get sucked into this mess, destroy their lives, destroy their careers, destroy their fortune, and still to this day they're doubling down and tripling down? I don't fucking get it. It's the stupidest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah, Mike Lindell, he built his fortune
Yeah.
and he pissed it away for Donald Trump. That's Trumpism, you know. It's I yeah, that's something I'll never understand because I have a business, you had a business.
Right.
You put your heart and soul into that. I'm not going to give that to another man,
No, just
you know.
because, I mean, do they think that it's going to make them more money or give them more power? And then when it's clearly not going to do that, why don't you just cut bait and save as much as you can? But they don't. They just
Yeah,
wait till the fucker burns down. Rudy Giuliani's going to be broke. Mike Lindell had to take an emergency loan for $600,000 and he was being charged a ridiculous interest rate that he could never pay. So now he's come out and say, I'm not paying you because the rate's too high. Well, you signed the deal, you dumb fuck. What are you going to do
yeah,
if you're not going to pay him? Because you're going to need more than $600,000 to save your life, and you're still going to fucking go down. You might as well file bankruptcy and take a shit on the 600,000 because he's probably got several million that he's going to leave behind too.
yeah, yeah. I don't know. It just you watch people throw away their lives and their fortunes, and you know you might as well say their families too, because
Yeah.
how many for a criminal, that's I guess I never went been I couldn't go to a cult. I couldn't be part of a cult. I just don't understand how you would get behind somebody like that.
When you look at Donald Trump's career from the time he started in business to this point now, just before this election or during this election uh, for president, you think about, from the casinos he's built to the contractors he didn't pay to the countries and the states he didn't pay. This motherfucker has been a wrecking ball for 60 years. I mean, he has absolutely left a wreckage, rubble behind him, but he still gets support. It amazes me to no end that people will be that stupid. I mean, if you're hiring somebody or you're going to work as a partner with somebody, you got to kind of look into them. And if you look into him and you see what he's left behind, why would you jump in the middle of that? I mean, any smart businessman wouldn't do it. If you're a bank, would you borrow Donald Trump money when you know he doesn't pay people back? I don't get how people still do these things. They're stupid business decisions.
yeah, I don't see how he's gotten to where he is by the way he does business. And then the people that vote for him because they think they want a businessman in office. Well, that's fine, but find a businessman. Donald Trump is not a businessman. He's a
No.
bank robber.
Yeah.
He's not a businessman. You know,
He's a dipshit that keeps getting bailed out, and for the life of me, I don't know why he gets bailed out.
yes.
We're gonna wrap up the Rational Boomer podcast, but we're on election day as people are listening to this, and we're talking to Howard, of course. He's in Western
Vote
Minnesota.
blue.
Vote blue.
Vote blue.
As people are listening to this, they're anticipating what the closing of the polls are going to do. Your gut reaction right now, how's it going to play out, at least the first stages when the polls close?
I I I really think Tom was going to just be decisive all the way through with a landslide. He is. I think by the time we go to bed tomorrow night, Donald Trump's going to be declaring victory, and the numbers are going to be reporting Kamala Harris victor.
So you think the numbers will be significant enough by the time we go to bed, say midnight, that it's apparent. We won't have the official call, but you'll know apparently who's winning because it will be so decisive.
I feel it will be, yes, and I could be wrong, but I feel really good about it. I
See,
really do.
see, that's where we're different. I know she's going to win. I know she's going to win in a big way. And people say, "How do you know?" And I just say, "Well, look at the facts." And they'll say, "Are you sure?" I'll go, "I can't be wrong on this. I just can't be wrong on this." And if people want a track record, I'm the guy that also told you there'd be no red wave in 2022. And people say, "Well, how could you say that?" Well, they just overturned Roe v. Wade. You pissed off every woman
Yeah,
in this country. What makes you think you can win election? And that issue is still the biggest issue going into today's election.
yes, yes. Well, one of the biggest. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um.
there's so many that take him
Yeah.
down. It's ridiculous.
There's. Yeah. There's. There's. I don't see how anybody could vote anything but blue this time. I know there's Republicans out there that are going to vote right down the line, but there's not a chance in hell that Donald Trump's going to win.
Well, anybody that votes for Donald Trump, I'll say it, they're dumb as shit, or they're complicit with evil, and they should be held responsible for the damage that was done to this country. And any of those people that voted for Donald Trump and stood with Donald Trump, when they come to the realization that they were wrong and they come to me looking for sympathy or forgiveness, sorry, not going to happen. What they did was it's not that they just disagreed with me. It's that they tried to damage this country and they fought like rabid fucking animals to do it. That can't be forgiven. I'm not forgiven that. I'm sorry. Maybe God will get me for that, but there is a line to be drawn, and that line is pretty solid right at this point.
I don't think they'll ever come and ask for forgiveness because I don't think they'll ever be smart enough to realize they voted for the wrong person.
I think you're right about that. I think you're absolutely right about it. All right, Howard, you're an old man. You're 3 years younger than I am, but you're an old man. You probably need your rest. Are you going to work tomorrow?
Yes, actually, I am.
You know what I got to do? I got to sit here on my ass watching the news to figure out what the fuck's going on. So I'll go to bed whenever I go to bed. But you have to work, and I admire you for having to do it, and I admire the fact that you took the time to talk to us tonight. So thank you very much.
Well, I felt I waited too long, and I listen to you every morning, and you're part of what keeps me going, and I repeat a lot of what you have to say.
Well,
So
well, thank you for that. Thank you for listening. And
blue
you did
wave.
wait too long. You did wait too long. So don't do that again. All right.
No. All right. Thank you, Mike.
I talk tough when we're on Zoom. When I'm in person, I probably would be a little
Yeah.
more, more easy about it. All right. Thanks, Howard. I appreciate it. Those of you listening, I want to thank you for taking the time to do that. Hope you have a great day. It's going to be a big day. Kamala's going to win, and we'll talk to you again later tonight or tomorrow because we got a lot of shit coming. So stick with us.